Okay, Matilde. So after reading through your poems here, there were a couple that I really liked and saw a lot of potential. One that I think you should work on to revise for the contest is your Identity and Mask poem. You call it True or False. I've read this one before. This is the one that you worked on. I think this is the revised version because I remember when I first read it, it didn't. It like felt a little like you were pulling apart the cotton ball, and this feels much tighter. There's still a couple things to kind of clean up a little bit and either replace or just edit or just tweak a little bit. Um, the part where you say the Facebook page of life and my wall was filled, the Facebook wall is already a metaphor, and so you're like making a metaphor, this metaphor that already exists. So what happens when I read that is that you got to remember that your audience is not high schoolers, it's not your peers, but the people reading for this contest are teachers. I've read for the contest before. They're English teachers, they're grad students, they're writers, and so what happens is that you have this interesting idea that I think is insightful and thoughtful, and then comes this like ding ding ding, I'm just a high school kid, and that's what happens when you do the Facebook page of life. That line makes it into a ding ding ding, you're just a high school kid, and not a ding 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 in a good way, and like it becomes easy to dismiss because it's just a kid, as opposed to I think what you have going on before that section. I think is much more insightful and feels like it could that an adult could connect to it. But then the Facebook page of life, it just you got to take it out. It's not doing what maybe you're hoping it's doing. Then when you get to, I'm looking at that next stanza, not the next one, the one after that, where the lie detector in your head, you basically kind of say it breaks and it's just broken and it just doesn't work anymore, and there's the silence. You might play with the idea of instead of having it break, it still works, but it like recalibrates or something. Like it works, but it can't figure out when you're lying. Like you're getting better at lying to yourself in some way. That if it just breaks, then it's not that you've become better at lying to yourself. It's that you just don't know. I don't know. Something like instead of the silence, if there's some other noise, it could be a little bit more eerie if there's some noise still there, but maybe just not whatever the alarm. Lie detectors don't really have alarms, but you talk about the alarm. And then toward the very end, it becomes a little bit dramatic. And the rest of it is nice and controlled. And I think you want to change how you end it because it feels like you're switching your tone and not necessarily in a good way. When you say, but if you cross the delicate line between in pain and addicted, it will trap you like a snake and strangle you. All of us, like you had these like nuances and these sort of like light variations. It was like making an impressionistic an impressionist piece of art, and then all of a sudden you decide, screw the impressionism, let's like Jackson Pollock it up, and it's like whoa whoa whoa, and it doesn't work, and it didn't work. Yeah, it feels like there's a major shift in tone there, and the tone that you have before feels much more controlled and thoughtful. And again, this is sort of one of those like, and now comes the teen angst like drama, and you don't want the teen angst drama. So change that ending to have it be maybe something that's more subtle, more nuanced, more thought provoking, more sort of adultish in that sense. If you want to know, like, when she says dramatic, what does she mean by that? If you go to your extra credit one, the My Cross to Bear, it's pretty dramatic. And while I think I wouldn't revise that one. I think leave it how it is and just don't submit that one. But I do think that's something that maybe you could steal from that one and put in your lie detector one is this notion of saying amen and like not quite meaning it, that could be an interesting sort of layer of the type of lies we tell ourselves. Um, and as sort of a programmed response, I think taking that amen and putting it in your identity and mass poem could be the best thing to take from that extra credit one. But that other one, you also get into this notion of like there's like strangling and there's blood and it becomes kind of dramatic. Another one that I think that you should play with is your comparison contrast poem called Repetition. You seem to focus more on the trail, on the path, than anything else going on in the poem, but the path is not really the interesting part of the poem. Um, the lines that I underlined were the ones that stuck out to me. They're fragmented sentences, pillaging the towns where his thoughts worked. This notion of like comparing thoughts to people, and then the fragmented sentences, like his mind is a town, was a cool analogy that you're working with here. Or like when you say his thoughts now coming out of their homes, this idea of like the sleepy morning when like the thoughts arise and come out and start intermingling. I really like this comparison that you have. Again, I'm not sure about all the stuff in between. Feel you're not really sure exactly what's going on. I wonder if you sort of made it more into like the story of the mind, and just continuing literally your first sentence, right? Could be his thoughts now coming out of their homes, and it could be someone waking up and then getting into sort of the internal, trying to capture like how the mind works, the sort of internal workings. I don't know, that might be something to play with. And then I liked your pick a prompt. I like that you're trying to define normal, but then you do it through like this circus thing, this circus metaphor. I like that you have a part of how we understand it is how the other circus acts are reacting to it, but we can't see it. We don't know what it looks like. And I don't know if you did that on purpose, if there's a point of not letting us see it, or if it was like that was the hard part and you were avoiding it. Um, it's tough because you say normal like a clown, but even like when you say clown, you might be picturing one type of clown and I might be picturing another type of clown, especially like, I don't know, like is it like the 1950s big red hair, red nose kind of clown? Is it like a Cirque du Soleil kind of clown? Is it the clown that we see in the parade? Like you need to describe the clown. And that will help us understand, I think, the whole like notion of normal that you're trying to get at. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential in those three poems, and I would recommend working on all three.